core significance of I is God. The experience of I am is to be still.
Hello and welcome to the Experience Podcast. I am a multi-dimensional being having a human experience. My name is Neil, and I'm joining you today with a story very close to my personal experience. And it's a fascinating story for me just because of how it came into being and how this was an experience that I experienced. And so I just want to get right into it. And like what we're going to be talking about is I recently went on an endeavor and a journey to Costa Rica. And I want to talk about how that came about, my experience going through the airports and traveling with the COVID restrictions that are currently in place. And so I want to get into that some. And then I also want to talk about my experience as a whole in Costa Rica. So initially, like leading up to this, I had no plans to even go to Costa Rica this year. This was a completely spontaneous action that I took on. And so kind of a backstory is I was doing a 5-day fast, and I do have a video about that on this channel if you want to check that out. So I was doing a 5-day fast, and during this fast, the opportunity was presented to me to travel to Costa Rica for a seminar event with Jonathan England. And So how this came about was I was on this fast, and so like on the first day, like you're pretty hungry, but by about the third day, like kind of the hunger fades away. So on the first day of this, it was I started it on a Monday, and my plan was to go from Monday to Friday, and then eat for the first time on Saturday, which I did. But this was on Monday, so I was extremely hungry at this point in the fast because it was the first day, and I had 0 calories. So on that day, I received a message from Jonathan England. So on that day, on that Monday, I received a message from Jonathan England, and I was already a part of. So what he has is a virtual online village that you can become a part of, and so I was already a part of this online virtual village, and I received a message via the village, um, like asking if I would want to go to Costa Rica for this live earth waking event. And so, like, a box popped up on my phone screen, and what the box read was the first option was not going, and the second option was maybe going, and the third option was for sure, like it just said going. And and I went to hit the X to like click off to get this box off my screen, and like it didn't let me X the box off without choosing an option. So I was like, well, if I hit the not going, I'm for sure not going. And already at this in this moment, I already felt like I wanted to go, but I didn't want to spend the money to go, and I felt very comfortable where I was at, and I knew that going to Costa Rica would like completely take me out of my comfort zone. Like I wouldn't necessarily have the supplements that I have for when I work out. I might not even probably will not even work out. Like I did light workouts while I was there, but so there was that. There's just a lot of comfort that I have here that I knew that going to Costa Rica would just tear me completely out of my comfort zone, which is and can be a blessing to get out of your comfort zone. So so I had this box pop up, and so like I really wanted to go, but I was in my comfort zone here. And then there was the maybe box. And if I hit the maybe box, I knew like maybe I'm not going or I'm going. Like if I hit maybe, the chances of me not going are like probably 90%. So then there was the option of going, but I didn't have a hotel schedule at this point. I didn't have a plane ticket scheduled. But I really wanted to go, and I felt inspired to go. So I hit this going, I hit the box that said going, and boom, the box popped off my screen. And like as soon as I hit the box that said going, I was like, huh, I actually just did that, and I have no plans on even how to get there. And it's not the end of the world if I don't show up because it's merely a computer generated thing, but at the same time, it now shows that I'm going to this event. So I was like, well, cool. Like, I'm going. Like, for real. Like, I now chose the option of going. And the thing with the not having enough money, so I'd been on Jonathan England's Zoom calls, like his live Zoom calls, the weekend prior to this fast, and that's really where I kind of got the feel for him and what he's about and what his purpose is on Earth, and like what his goals are. And so I really got a feel for him there. And one thing that picked up from him in like his wealth masterclass is like when you go to buy a product, you don't ask how much the product costs. You ask how much is the product going to make me. And so in making that decision in going to Costa Rica, I sort of implemented that and I asked myself, what would a person who has enough money, what would his decision be? And immediately, a person who has enough money, like it just came to me, like he would just say yes and he would go because he wants to go. So there was that, and I incorporated that into my decision making and I chose to go. So the next day was Tuesday, and I woke up and I did like some meditations, I did some breathing exercises. And then I scheduled a hotel at Villas Del Mar in Dominical, which is where the event was going to be held at. And so I scheduled a hotel for, I believe, 3 nights. And so I would have arrived a day early, but then I scheduled my hotel. So the first night that I would have slept in Costa Rica, I may have just slept outside on the ground. I didn't have a hotel scheduled. But then I had the one by Villas Del Mar I had scheduled um, for 3 nights. I believe it would have been Thursday. Actually, would have been Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is what I scheduled it for. So I made those arrangements for the hotel the next day on Tuesday, and then on the following day on Wednesday, I woke up, did meditations, did breath work, and then I went for a bike ride. And on that bike ride, after the bike ride actually, I was sitting in my truck by a lake, and I began making phone calls on getting a plane ticket. And that's another thing, I haven't ever purchased a plane ticket before. So the entire process of purchasing a plane ticket was completely new to me. And so I was on the websites and I knew you could do it online. So I was kind of seeing how that played out. And I was searching multiple websites trying to gain some clarity on the best route to go about getting plane tickets. And then I get on the phone with a gentleman, and initially he thought that I wanted to like review my plane tickets and to see, if my flights are still on track and so forth. But then he realized that I wanted to purchase like new plane tickets, and then he began to help me out. And this person was extremely helpful. And so I wanted a nonstop flight from Chicago O'Hare Airport to like Cupis in Costa Rica, which is probably like an hour and a half drive from the hotel where I was going to stay at. And something to note here is that I didn't have any plans to get from Cupis to Villas Del Mar, which is an hour and a half drive away. So I had no plans. Initially at this point. So I was on the phone with this gentleman, and he wasn't able to get me a flight to Cupis, but he was able to find me a flight to the San Jose airport. And the San Jose airport was another 2 hours north of Cupis. So I was looking at a 4 hour drive, approximately 4.5 hour drive from when I landed at the San Jose airport in Costa Rica to Villas Del Mar Hotel in Dominical. It was like a 4.5 hour drive to that hotel. So, and I had no plans to get there other than the fact that I knew that I was going to end up at Villas Del Mar. So I now had plane tickets on Wednesday, and I was still doing the fast. And by the time Wednesday evening was around, I was pretty much ecstatic from the ketone bodies being released within myself from fasting, but also from this brand new endeavor that I've just embarked on, going to Costa Rica. Like, the accumulation of the both of them like had me super inspired, super excited, and like just ecstatic at that point. And so I now had my flights, and they were for a week and a half after the fast is when I would have flown out. And so I just taken a week off of work to do this fast. And so now I go back the following Monday to the place where I work at my job, which is Joy Over Boredom. And I tell my employer, I do not ask him, I tell him that I'm planning on taking a week off the following week. So I just taken a week off, then I go to work, and I'm planning on working that week. And then the week after that, halfway through that week, I'm planning on taking off a week again to fly to Costa Rica. So I tell my employer that I'm planning on doing this, and that if he chooses to fire me, that's okay. But if he chooses to allow me to continue working, I want to go back and work for him when I get back from Costa Rica. So he chose to have me come back and work for him. And so that's what I did. I worked that week, and then it would have been Wednesday of the next week, early Wednesday. So early Wednesday, so early that I woke up at 12:30 Wednesday in the AM, and at 1:30 we left my house. I had a friend drive me from my house to the airport and drop me off, and we left my house at 1:30 in the AM. And my first flight was at 5:40, I believe 5:44, 5:45. So I had a 2.5 hour drive to the airport, and then that also gave me some time to check my bags, make sure I was in the correct place for when my plane was about to leave. And so I get to the airport, and immediately upon entering the airport, they have you put a mask on. And this is something that I feel strongly about, and I feel like it's not necessary, and that we're hiding people's smiles by doing that. And I also feel like it's a form of control by the government. And I also feel like criminals wear masks, and like, why are we wearing masks when we're not criminals? We're human beings having a human experience, or we're spiritual beings having a human experience. So I feel very strongly about wearing masks, but I chose to do this because of the value that I knew that I would get out from accepting, first of all, doing something that I don't want to do for an extended period of time. Like, we're talking 6-8 hours that I was wearing a mask. And then also the value that I would get out of the endeavor and the traveling to Costa Rica, and that I may potentially find some solutions to the mask wearing, to solutions within myself to better navigate such situations in the future. So I saw the value in it, so I wore a mask. and I didn't like it. But so that was like a kind of personal thing that I had to overcome right off the bat. And then I got my tickets. I had my passport. That went very smooth. And then I was in the line to go like for I believe so. I went through security first, and then I was at the gate for where my plane is at, and it was at that line that I was asking a bunch of questions because I wanted information, and so I was asking about like COVID tests, like flying to Costa Rica, and I was informed that there's no COVID test required to fly to Costa Rica or to enter the country. But beings that I'm leaving one country and going to another, I had to purchase traveler's insurance. And that was something that I didn't know about until I got to the airport. So she's like, you're not able to fly unless you have this traveler's insurance. So I was like, all right, well, how do I get that? And the thing with the traveler's insurance, it's not just the same as like your like life insurance or something like that. What it is, it's literally for when you're traveling, um, and I had to purchase it on my cell phone, and then what they gave me was a QR code, and it generated a QR code that you can scan with your mobile device, and then the QR code was what allowed me to get on the plane. And with the traveler's insurance, obviously. So that was like something that I had to purchase before I even took my first flight. So I purchased that, and the start date for the insurance was set for the 22nd of October, and it was the 20th when I flew out. So that'll become important later in the story. So it wasn't active until 2 days after I arrived, because I was planning on arriving in Costa Rica that Wednesday, the same day that I flew out of the United States. So I like navigated a few challenges initially in the airport, and so now I was on the plane going to Fort Lauderdale, and then I had a connecting flight going to San Jose, Costa Rica, and so I flew to Fort Lauderdale, got the connecting flight, flew to San Jose, went extremely smoothly, landed in San Jose airport, and I landed there. It was afternoon, per se, afternoon, evening. I believe maybe 2 o'clock, 2:30. I landed at the San Jose airport, and upon landing, so I had a 4.5 hour drive ahead of me to Rica Del Mar in Dominical, and had no plans to get there. So, but I had faith that I was going to find arrangements and be able to make arrangements to get me there. I completely faithed it. I had faith that it was going to work out, and it did, and we'll talk about that. So I just had this unwavering faith that I was going to get to my hotel. And so I get off the plane, and right off the bat, I had to go through immigration, and I didn't know that. And I found that out. So I found that pretty exciting. And also, like, it was it brought up some feelings of insecurity to me because I didn't know what the immigration consisted of. But it was very simple. So you go through the immigration and they asked for my passport. I gave them my passport. They had me pull the mask away from my face so they could visually look at my face, compare it to the passport picture. And then they asked my business in the country. Was I here for business? Was I here for pleasure? Was I here for traveling? Um, and after that, they smiled and said, "Have a nice day." So the immigration thing was actually very simple. And so I went through that, and then I found, when did I find this out? So I believe it may have been in the immigration where that's what it was, because they asked for traveler's insurance. And I presented the traveler's insurance that I had purchased just before I flew out of the US. And they looked it up and it was valid, but the start date was 2 days. It started on a Friday and I was there on a Wednesday. So they're like, well, it's valid, but you're going to have insurance for those 2 days that you're here. So I was like, oh, great. Like, okay, so how do I get insurance for those 2 days? So what I had to do was purchase another traveler's insurance, and it was $7 a day. And I purchased this for Wednesday and Thursday, the 2 days that before my other insurance was able to cover me, essentially. So I purchased two different types of insurance, but I was good to go. I was in Costa Rica. And during the purchasing of the traveler's insurance, the second time, I was communicating with the person, which was somewhat of a challenge because now I was in Costa Rica and like everybody spoke Spanish. I believe it was Spanish. And so, like, some of them could speak English, but it was heavily accented. So even the English was somewhat difficult to understand at times. But I was able to navigate it fairly okay. So, but from this lady at where I was getting the traveler's insurance at, I was asking her about my options for traveling and modes of transportation, like around the San Jose area, and also like getting from there to Dominical. And she brought up that there's buses available that regularly take tourists to different areas of Costa Rica. So she gave me the options of the buses, where they pick up. And then she said I'll have to communicate with the bus drivers to basically to find out where they're going and to get me to where I want to go. So I was like, great, I got my insurance, I got my bags, I got all my things, and I'm in Costa Rica and I'm ready to go explore. So I go to where she was telling me that the buses pick people up. And as I'm walking, I'm still in the airport, and so I have the exit right here in front of me. Like, we're talking 20 feet in front of me. There's some gentlemen standing here talking, and I'm walking to where the buses are at, which is outside of the airport. And one of the gentlemen's, I hear him talking to another lady, and he's saying something about taxi, like she wants a taxi, and then the one gentleman asked me if I want a taxi, or if I want to yes, have a taxi. So I thought about it for about 5 seconds, and I felt into it, and I felt like this is a good option. I was like, because a taxi may be almost quicker than like a bus. So I for sure thought I might as well talk with the gentleman, and so I talked with him, and he asked where I wanted to go to, and I said Dominical, and I knew it was a far drive, like a 4.5 hour drive. So I asked him if he's willing to drive that distance, and he goes, "Yes, that's my job. I work here at the airport, and it's normal." And so I was just like super grateful for this taxi driver for being there. And So we go outside. He asked me to grab my bags, and he's like, "Let's go," and like, let's get started, because he knew that he had a 4.5 hour drive and a 4.5 hour drive back. So he's looking at 8, 9 hours. Um, so he wanted to get going as soon as possible. So like 8 minutes later, like I'm in the taxi and we're going to Villas Del Mar that evening. As soon as I get out, not even out of the airport, I'm already headed there. So like the gratitude in me at that point is just like overflowing. Like it's a spilling cup, just overflowing. And I feel super grateful, and I also feel apprehensive. And the reason I feel apprehensive is because I'm in a foreign country and I'm in a taxi with a gentleman that I've just met, and he says he knows where he's going. He's not even using his maps, like Google Maps. So I'm like, all right, is he going where I want to go, or is he going where he wants to go? So I just continued to remain grateful and accepted that he knew where he was going, and that I had already communicated where I wanted to go. So I just accepted that he was a trustworthy, loving human being, and he was. And like on the way there, I began to gain more confidence in him, because we were talking. He was telling me about the landscape, and like supposedly he was telling me that there's like 7 volcanoes in Costa Rica, and like 3 of them are active volcanoes. And he actually pointed one out to me, like just over to the right, and it was like way off in the distance. You could see this volcano with clouds around the top, and he said that was an active volcano. So that was super cool. And as we were driving, he's like, he's got a few spots like that he wants to stop, because he feels like it would be. He's like, you can take some pictures. Like he's got some cool stuff to show me. So I was like, well, I really like this. The seminar thing for Jonathan England doesn't start until Friday of that day, of Friday of that week, and it's currently Wednesday as I'm with this taxi driver, and so I really have no time schedule. And so I'm like, well, heck yeah, let's see whatever you feel like is worth seeing. Like I'm willing to experience it. So he stops at a fruit stand. Super cool. Like, so I say fruit stand, but it was like multiple stands, to where it was almost like a consignment, like they may have at a fair where they had multiple booths, and they all just had like fruit and foods and all different natural foods. And I was super impressed. And I purchased like a Walmart bag of various different fruits, a lot of them that I haven't ever seen before. Like one of them was a rambutan, which is like a reddish, hairy sort of fruit, super delicious. And I purchased a papaya as well, because I'd had papayas before, but I wanted one that was grown locally, because the ones that I usually eat are grown in Mexico, and then they fly to the US, and they just, I wanted to see the taste difference from like a local grown papaya. So I purchased one of those. Um, so like we were at the fruit stand, we kind of checked that out briefly, talked with the person by the fruit stand, and then we continued, and then he stopped at this river, and there were 2 gentlemen by the river that were selling these crocodile teeth necklaces, and I didn't purchase one. And like they had just gobs of necklaces, of crocodile teeth necklaces. And this river was one of the most famous rivers in Costa Rica, and I do not know the name of it. And in this river, at this particular spot, there, when the river is lower, there's like multiple crocodiles, and like people were saying like 30 to 40 crocodiles that just kind of are in that area. and we only saw one crocodile. The river was very high at the time we were there, and it was the rainy season at the time I was there. And another thing that I learned from local people there is that the Costa Rica only has two seasons, and the seasons are a wet season and then a dry season. And the wet season can last like 6, 7 months, and then the dry season is like the rest of the year. And in the dry season, like stuff just really grows from all the rain. But also, like, it's almost the temperature barely, it does fluctuate some, but very little during both seasons. So that's a fascinating tidbit. So after we saw the crocodiles, we took some pictures, we left the river area, and we continued. And like something that I didn't mention, but I feel like it's important to bring up, like San Jose at the airport was super like industrialized and like super established. They had a Walmart and a Costco, and so I just wanted to bring that up because I thought like I perceived like my expectation was like I may be going to like the jungle, like where there's less people and where it's less established. But San Jose Airport area was super established, cars, buses, trucks everywhere. So now that we're by this river and we're kind of past that, we're probably 2 hours away from San Jose at this point, and it is looking more like what I had expected and anticipated. Like it was more jungle, like banana trees were everywhere, and it was more rural, but there was still a lot of people on the road and even beside the road, walking, biking. There were multiple houses. The houses were like different. They were some were super nice and extravagant. Some were less nice, but kind of quaint. And so there was still a lot of people, but less people than San Jose area per se. So we continued. We went to this one area where it was almost sunset, and the sunset at, I believe, like 5:30, 6 o'clock. So like fairly early in Costa Rica while I was there, and so it was almost sunset. We went. There was this little thing off like a shoulder off the highway that we parked, and we watched the sunset, and we kind of took some pictures of that, like me and this taxi driver did. And then we continued, and it was dark when we got to Dominical, and like so he drove. So this guy is just incredible because he just wanted to show me like he wanted to show me Costa Rica, and I'm super grateful for the taxi driver for that. And so we go to Dominical, and he just drives straight out to the beach, and we get out and we watch the water some more, and it was just like it was dusk, but it wasn't completely dark yet. So we were watching the waves. There were a few people on the beach. We took some pictures, and then he asked me if I'm ready to go. I said I'm ready, and I get in the taxi, and we go to the hotel from Villa. That's called Villas Del Mar, and it was only maybe like a 10-minute drive from the beach. Barely that, like probably 8 minutes. So I get to the hotel, and it's Wednesday, and my room reservation begins on Friday. So I'm talking with the lady at the front desk, and we extend my room reservation 2 more days. So I paid for Wednesday evening and also for Thursday evening, and I reserved 2 more nights because I got there earlier. Like I was expecting a whole day to get from the airport to the hotel, it's just I planned for a whole day because I knew it was a 4.5 hour drive and I didn't know how I was going to get there. So I planned a whole day for that journey, and I was there the same day that I flew in. So it blew my mind, and I was super grateful the entire time. And so now I'm there. So I sleep, I rest, and I wake up the next day, and you hear these like "Er," and like screeches and booms like boom, like noises in the jungle that are these like there are these monkeys, and then there's these birds like macaws and toucans that you hear. And so that's kind of like how I woke up. Like I woke up and I just hear these jungle noises. And like the hotel room where I'm staying at is, so they have the main lodge, and then all the rooms are on trails and like paths away from the main lodge and like in the jungle, like separate from the main lodge but connected via trails. So it's like really kind of in the jungle at this point. And so like the next day is Thursday and I have the whole day to explore, and explore I did. So I went into the town of Dominical, and I actually before that even, so I woke up, I meditated, I did some breath work, and then I ate breakfast at the hotel. And then after breakfast, I'll talk about the breakfast. So the breakfast was an amazing breakfast, and what they had was eggs, and then they had brown rice with like vegetables in it, along with cooked plantains. They had waffles, and they also had mixed fruit, which was like papaya, pineapple, watermelon. They had like multiple fruits mixed together. So that was like their breakfast, and super amazing breakfast. All the fruit was fresh, eggs and the rice tasted fresh. And so, like, I ate breakfast and then I went, jogged, walked to the town of Dominical. And the road was a dirt road and it ran beside a river, a like super, it was a greenish river, like greenish blue. And it was very beautiful. The sides were like lined with rocks, and it looked like it had a very rocky bottom to it. Um, so I walk into Dominical, and I was kind of doing some of the shops and things that they had for sale. And I see this like this surf shop thing that's also an information center. And I go over and I start talking with a gentleman, and I ask him like what is like a surf lesson consist of, and then he tells me that it's like 2 hours, and you go out with an instructor, and like you get your own board, and like the instructor kind of teaches you how to surf, and it's like a 2 hour session. And so I ask him how much it is, like money wise, and he says it's $50. And I was like, okay, like that seems super reasonable. So I paid for it. I filled out. They had like some brief paperwork for me to fill out, and I did that. And then it was like 9 o'clock, and the surf session didn't start until 10:30. So I had another hour approximately to like walk around and Dominical and just kind of check the shops out, which I was doing. Um, so I walk almost out to the beach. They had like a bunch of tapestries set up, with like Mandela effect tapestries, all sorts of like psychedelic tapestries, and they had all sorts of gadgets, um, carved out of wood, carved out of like coconut shells. They had some wooden, very orient looking masks that like native people may have worn for dances or ceremonies. They had that type of thing there. They had like a few plaques with like lizards on them, all sorts of that type of things. I was kind of just seeing this, and I purchased a boomerang and like a few other small cool items. And I had to keep them small because there was a weight limit. I had two carry-on bags for the airport, and um, the weight was 15 pounds per bag, so I wasn't able to exceed that. So I had to keep it within the 15-pound range. So the things that I was buying were fairly small and light. So I purchased some trinkets, went back to the surf shop, and it was like around 10 o'clock at that time. So he had me lay on the ground on my stomach, and we practiced this move that you use to push up, and then you kind of get into this position to surf. And he had me practice it on like dry ground multiple times, and then we get out to the beach, and I set up a camera that I have. I still haven't even viewed. I filled up 132 gigabytes of video while I was in Costa Rica, and I still have yet to review that. So I do not know the quality at this point. So I set this camera up, and he had me do another multiple steps on the beach, on getting up on the board. So we did that, and then we surfed for like a while. And like initially, like I'd get maybe 25, 50 feet, and I'd lose my balance and wow, bail off the surfboard. And then so we kept working at it. He tells me like I have to push up with both hands rather than just pushing up with one, because like it's shifting you off balance. And he keeps telling me tips. And like by probably 15 surfs, I was super tired because we had the surfboard, and we were walking beside the board, and you'd push them over the wave, and then the wave would just like smash over you, and you'd hold your breath, get up, and then walk to the next wave, push the board over, and it would smash over you. And we were walking maybe 200 feet out from shore, 200, 300 feet probably. It was a good distance, to where the waves would start becoming maybe about 5 foot high. And what he also had me do was, when they got to that height, you would push the board over, and then you would dive underneath the wave, let it fall, and then you would get up and continue walking. And then as soon as like this one wave, as soon as one passed, you would turn the board around, lay on the board, and get ready for the next one to push you. So like the process of surfing in and then walking out through the water, through like waist deep, chest deep water with waves smashing over you, really got you super, super tired. And so I did probably 30 surfs. And the instructor said that I got three that were like super great, like phenomenal. And I got like seven or eight that were kind of moderate, like okay, like they work. And he said the rest of them like weren't good at all. And like I've got quite a bit of improving to do. So I had a very great time doing that, and then we got back on the beach, and the instructors, because they had multiple people and multiple instructors that were teaching people how to surf at the time I was there, and so they brought this cooler to the beach with coconuts inside, on ice, that were sliced to where you could just use your finger and punch a hole to where the little meat still was, and then you could just drink this coconut water right out of the coconut. And that was super sweet. And because I like the Pacific Ocean where we were surfing at was like very salty, and you'd get this in your nose and your mouth. And then to go and to drink that coconut water was just extremely sweet and incredible. So there was that, and like walking back to the surf shop, like we walked back rather than drive back, and And then I got a smoothie like immediately after that at a shop nearby, like a 4 fruit smoothie. I believe I had pineapple, papaya, banana, and star fruit potentially, something like that. So I had this smoothie, and then soon after that, I went back to the hotel and kind of pretty much like stayed there for the rest of the day. It was already like afternoon at that point, and then the following day was Friday, and I ate breakfast and like went to the villa thing. Actually, on the previous day, on Thursday, yes, on Thursday, um, like Jonathan England and Kurt and a few of the people that are with them, their staff they were in the hotel like lobby eating area, getting the chairs and the tables set up for the next day on the Friday, which was the first day of their seminar. And so like I recognized them, and so I recognized them from the Zoom call. And so I talked with them briefly, and they asked if I was there for the event, and I said I was. So I just briefly met them that day, and then the next day, the event actually started, and then we had 3 days of, so it would have been Friday, Saturday, Sunday, of 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Like seminars on like spiritual connection, on like wealth, on health, on it was just many different facets that we delved into over the course of these 3 days. And so I met some extremely phenomenal people at this place, and like there are people that like there's some friendships that I'm super glad I made, and like hopefully I'll see these people in the future, because there's so much happening in the world, and but there's some very fantastic loving human beings out there as well, and more so every day. And I'm super grateful that I got to go to this event and for the experience of being in Costa Rica overall. And then, so like after this event, um, on the following Monday at 3 a.m., I flew home. And this was a challenging time because like I I really had a feeling like I was at a place where I felt like I belonged, to the point to where I was asking myself the question like, what is there at home for me? What am I going home to? And with the current job that I'm at, which is joy over boredom, it was like, what's here for me? And the thing that came up and the thing that I kind of received was like, family is here for me, and I value family extremely, extremely, extremely much. And I feel like family is like one of the most important things in my life. But I also know that my family is on their own journey, their own spiritual journey. And that spiritual journey will continue regardless of the fact if I'm in their lives or if I'm not in their lives. So there was that, and I made the decision to come home, and I feel like it was the right decision, and I guess we will see. But I had like the most ecstatic time in Costa Rica, and like, so I'll just talk about the process on the flights home. So on the flights home, like, so I got to the airport and I flew from Costa Rica to Fort Lauderdale. And okay, so backtrack some. Before we flew out from Costa Rica, I found out that a COVID um, test was required for me. Like, I had to take a COVID test to show that I wasn't sick. And this brought about some apprehensiveness to me because of the fact that I know that I feel like that these tests are inaccurate. And I feel like the thing that they're testing for with these COVID tests can be anything. Like, if you have sniffles or if you have like a head cold, like, I feel like these COVID tests can pick that up. So, and I feel super healthy. I felt super healthy when I was there. So, like, I had this premonition, like, yes, I'm most definitely going to pass it. But then I also have this premonition that I feel like they can show positive when the patient is in a completely healthy state of being. So I also had that feeling, but I had faith that if let's say if I was meant to come to America, I would come back here. But if it showed positive and I was meant to stay in Costa Rica, then I have faith that I will stay here and that it will work out here. So either way, I had faith in the process, and so I showed negative, and it so I that was the COVID test was required to enter the United States of America. So no, it wasn't required to enter Costa Rica, but it was required to enter the United States of America. So I showed negative, and which allowed me to fly, and I was super grateful for that. So I flew from Costa Rica to Fort Lauderdale. Then I get to Fort Lauderdale, and there, I guess I find out that my flight has been delayed. It was supposed to leave at 8 o'clock, and it's now delayed until 11 o'clock because there's storms and like thunderstorms, weather things that are going on, and that it's not safe to fly until it's either passed or slowed down some, or so it's got delayed for 3 hours. And so I was really wanting to be home, but I had to accept this, and my patience really got an upgrade at that time. And then I arrived in Chicago, and I had a friend come pick me up, and I'm super grateful for that too, because this particular friend was working the next day and he's self-employed, but he took the time to come and pick me up at the airport. So I'm super grateful for that. If you made it to this part of the video, your time is highly valued and appreciated. I'm super grateful for your time. I'm super grateful for you being you. Continue staying multidimensional, stay blessed, continue experiencing. One love.